Hello, it is Friday, April 17th, and I have got the great Glenn Kirschner joining me. If you want to jump to our conversation, which you can also watch on YouTube and Substack, Facebook, and more, it starts at 22 minutes. But even though I'm late, I figured I'd put a clip show together and some headlines for you. I'm late because I was up with many of you last night. We had almost 70 people at last night's hangout, did almost 2 hours, and it was fun. We had a great conversation, lots of good laughs, recapped Pod Jam, and if you're a subscriber, you can go listen to it. There should be a link in the daily email where there's also a good shot of vitamin N. Get outside, take pictures of nature, send them to me. No man-made object. StandUpWithPete at gmail.com is the best place to reach me for all of your questions, your comments, your criticisms, your jokes, your links, your whatever you want to send me. StandUpWithPete at gmail.com. Also, I'll be joining Dean Obeidallah and John Fugelsang on Dean's show on SiriusXM, so listen to that tonight. That's always fun, and I'll try to share the audio as an episode over the weekend or maybe even Monday. All right, we made it through the week. It's Friday, and it's time to get to those headlines and clips. And remember, I can't do this daily show without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic or Substack at StandUpWithPete. Either way, you can get a paid subscription at one of those two places or even Venmo me a tip, as someone did yesterday. Thank you very much to Mike G for buying me lunch. Appreciate it. He said, been loving the pod. Keep it up. You can always Venmo me if you want. There's a link in every day's show notes. Okay, let's get after it right now with today's headlines. What a week we have had. Yesterday, there was Russ Vought and RFK Jr. I saw were on Capitol Hill testifying in front of House committees, I believe. So I got a couple clips from each of them and more. But let's get started with Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove of California's 37th district. The reporter from Midas Touch caught up with her outside of the Capitol, and she did not hold back on our commander and thief.
About the impact that this war in Iran is having on our national debt?
Oh my God. Yes, of course I am. Stevie Wonder can even see how much this is costing us. So gas prices are going up. It's almost $10 in California. And fertilizer is going up. I mean, you name it, the prices have gone up. And this dude, Dr. Jesus, okay, is wanting to spend $2 billion of your money every single day rather than help you get health care. Fuck his ass.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Wow. Fuck his ass. Fuck his ass. I feel like if the inflection was more on his, then it would be like, fuck him. But when it's fuck his ass, it sounds like you're suggesting somebody fuck his ass or something. And that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, as it probably should you now, having heard the same thing in the way that I framed it. All right. Well, that was just a clip to get us started. Obviously, there are a lot of headlines from yesterday that I wanted to get to as well, including a 10-day ceasefire that started in Lebanon, thousands of families trying to head home. I think it's doubtful that the ceasefire holds. The deal is between Israel and Lebanon, and Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia, hasn't said whether it would fully accept the truce. So the deal's between Israel and Lebanon, but the way I read it made it seem like there was a third party agreeing to that deal. No, they are a third party, Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia, and they haven't said whether they're going to fully accept the truce. So lots more to say about that, but want to mention a few other stories. Stocks have soared again yesterday. The war in Iran has started to pinch the finances of many Americans in many ways, according to the New York Times. But don't worry, the stock market's way up. Yesterday, the Secretary of Defense, DUI Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who is just an absolute monster, renewed threats to attack Iran's power plants and other energy sites if leaders did not agree to a peace deal. And he also made up a quote, or misplaced a Bible quote, which is actually from, you heard about this, from Pulp Fiction. He said it, thinking it was a real Bible. Is that possible? I still am confused whether or not he knows what the hell he's doing, or what the hell he did. Yesterday, the House voted early to extend for 10 days an expiring law that allows surveillance without warrant. In grueling congressional hearings, according to the New York Times, Health Secretary Bobby Kennedy Jr., who is also a man who admitted to cutting off a raccoon penis, seemed to shift his tone on vaccines. He said measles jabs were safe and effective for most people. Is the tide turning a little bit, maybe? Also, Dr. Jesus picked Dr. Erica Schwartz, who's a Navy officer and former Deputy Surgeon General, and supports vaccines to be the next head of the CDC. So that seems like a good piece of news as well. Yesterday, the Senate voted to allow mining around Minnesota's boundary waters and expanse of federally protected lakes and forests. A Chilean company wants a copper and nickel mine there, so we'll see what happens there in Minnesota. The former lieutenant governor of Virginia, who was scandal-ridden and controversial yesterday, fatally shot his wife and then himself while his kids were in the house. An absolutely horrific story yesterday. And I'm not going to add anything more to that other than how horrible it sounds. And that's it. I thought this was funny. The New York Times said that Mayor Zohran Mamdani and his wife, Rama Douaji, reported a combined income of roughly $145,000 for their 2025 joint tax return. That is not a lot of money in New York City. For two people. That included $1,600 from his rapping and about $10,000 from her artwork. So, wow, how about that? I've got a great clip from him coming up in the clip show. The acting ICE director yesterday said that he plans to resign. Well, he's going to be brought up on, well, at least subpoenaed, I'm sure, in the next Congress. ICE agents arrested an 85-year-old French widow who married her American military sweetheart last year. How about that? They got her. Good job, you guys. NPR announced yesterday it received two gifts totaling $113 million, and that one of them was its largest ever from a living donor. I think it was $80 million. Why don't they get a lot more than that? It seems like not that much money, that NPR. I don't know. That just seems like not enough money in my mind. In the third strike in 3 days, the 51st overall, the United States military struck a boat in the Eastern Pacific Ocean on Wednesday, killing 3 people that it accused of smuggling drugs. Russia's war in Ukraine isn't on the front pages every day, says Steve Bannon over at Matt Al Blog, but they launched a vast missile and drone attack across Ukraine overnight and early Thursday morning, killing at least 18 people, destroying any thought that the temporary Easter truce announced by Putin meant anything more permanent than that. Yesterday, the Republican-led House once again rejected an effort to curtail Trump's war with Iran, rejecting a war powers resolution for the second time. The vote came more than 6 weeks after we first launched the attack on Iran. It was 213 to 214, a tighter margin than last month's attempt at tying the president's hands. An ICE agent who was part of the federal immigration surge in Minnesota earlier this year was charged with a felony second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon. I talk about that with Glenn Kirschner coming up, and I've got audio from the prosecutor as well. Looks like the Pope is not backing down. Amid a growing dispute with the Trump administration over the legitimacy of American attacks in Iran, Pope Leo used a speech on Thursday in Cameroon to express, quote, woe to those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth, unquote. Wow. Pope Leo hitting him hard from Cameroon. Apparently the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, broke the U.S. record Wednesday for the longest post-Vietnam War deployment. Nearly a 10-month span that saw it take part in both the military raid in Venezuela and the Iran war. Congratulations, guys. And in a related story, the USA Today is reporting that they are rationing their food. They're down to very little food on one of the ships that is in the war. They showed pictures of it. Have you seen this? There's this gray piece of, I don't know what it is, if it's edible. It looks bad, and the morale is down, they're saying, as well, from this anonymous troops on one of those ships. All right, those are the headlines that I've gathered for you today. Now it's time to get to the clip show, and I'm going to start with Zohran Mamdani on CBS the morning show, the CBS Network morning news show, where he's talking to Gayle King and the other guy there. I don't know his name. I'm bad. I'm not even going to go look it up. But I thought this was really great. I love this. It speaks for itself. There's questions about the Democratic Party. He in it and a critic of it. Well, he's actually DSA, but here it is.
You know, what I find is that New Yorkers ask me less about how I describe my politics and more about whether my politics includes them. And I think what we can see is that a democratic socialist politics is one that should be judged on its delivery, like any ideology. And what we're showing in this city is we can we can pursue the big things like universal child care and do the pothole politics at the same time that we're showing, and not just filling in the potholes, changing the catch basins, but also repaving over 1,000 miles of roadway.
But Mr. Mayor, presidential and statewide elections are often decided in battleground regions that do not look like New York City.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Before I was the mayor, I was an assembly member of Astoria in Long Island City. At that time, I was told that you could only be a Democratic Socialist in Northwest Queens. Then I became the mayor. Now the next question is the state. Then the next question will be the country. I think that this is a politics that can flourish anywhere because, frankly, there is only one majority in this country. That's the working class. And it's time we have a politics that puts them at the heart of what it is that we're pursuing and not as part of the appendix.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Perfectly framed. Perfectly worded. What do you think of that, Zohran Mamdani? What good answer, man. Okay, let's go on to another star of the Democratic Party. It is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez making a great case against the war in Iran on the House floor yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In February, the Trump administration, in conjunction with the Israeli government, launched an illegal and disastrous war in Iran. They provided no rationale to the American people. They sought no legal authority from Congress, and they have since descended our world and our global economy into chaos. And that was just the beginning. Now, President Trump has threatened to use the United States military to carry out acts of genocide against the Iranian people, innocent civilians. Up until today, he has done this on his own, a rogue actor. But today, we vote on whether or not he will do this in the name of the American people. Congress must vote to exercise our power to stop this chaos or whether we sanction it. And we must vote to restrain it. I urge our colleagues that we vote yes and that we end and stop all that is imperiled before us. And with that, I yield back.
All right. Wow. Good stuff. Always from AOC. Her voice sounds a little taxed. But you know who doesn't sound like this guy's voice? Yes, I got to play it for you. I saw a few of the moments yesterday's hearings with the Health and Human Service Secretary, the disgraced Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but these are a couple of my favorite comments. This is Congressman Harder, Harder, asking RFK Jr. about mercury, which he knows everything about, and why it's okay for the EPA to get rid of regulations on mercury. And then he's like, I don't know, I don't work at the EPA. I don't know. That was my RFK impression. Very bad.
That mercury emissions from coal plants harm kids.
I do.
Terrific. In February of this year, the Trump administration finalized the repeal of the mercury and air toxic standards. As a result, coal-burning power plants are now allowed to emit more than twice as much mercury as they were before. Just last week, the Trump administration proposed to weaken a rule that monitors and protects groundwater from coal ash, a waste product that contains heavy metals like mercury and lead. How are these actions consistent with your agenda to make our children healthy again?
Those are actions that are not taken by my agency, and I am not familiar with exactly what's happening at EPA, so I would have to ask Lee Zeldin about that.
This has been a major news story. You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You made a career out of fighting mercury pollution. Are you telling me that you don't have an opinion about this mercury rule?
Well, I don't think any mercury is good, and that's one of the reasons we're holding up the Gavi grants, because they're giving mercury vaccines that are banned in Europe and the United States.
Mr. Secretary, I don't
161 million kids in Africa.
On this mercury rule. This is your administration making this decision. Are you critical of it? Why have you stayed silent on this?
You should call Lee Zeldin here and ask him about those. That's not in my. I have a $2.3 trillion agency. I've got
Secretary, you had in your testimony, you wrote an entire report.
I was not part of the hearings. I was not part of that decision. I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know anything about it.
It sounds like pretty convenient amnesia to me, because you wrote a report where you talked about the damage of toxic air and water pollution.
Mercury is absolutely, it's the most powerful neurotoxin that we know of in the universe.
So why are you working for an administration that is doubling the amount of mercury pollution in our air and water?
I am running HHS, and I'm ending the chronic disease epidemic.
I think it sounds like an awful lot.
Which is what President Trump wants. And I'm not going to comment on that because I don't know anything about it.
Well, I think that's very convenient for you, and it shows a significant degree of cowardice. It's not just mercury. President Trump in July 2025 granted 50 chemical plants.
Why don't you ask me something that I'm in charge of instead of other things?
Are you not in charge of healthcare and human services?
Yeah, HHS.
And you wrote a report about how we want to make sure that our kids.
What you're asking me about is not a decision that's being made by my agency. Why don't you ask me about something, and I won't ask you about something that's happening in the United States Senate.
Sir, I'm happy to talk about what's going on in the United States Senate. I'd be happy to talk about the damages that mercury pollution did. I think it's pretty disturbing.
I'm telling you what I know, which is mercury is a toxin. We should be minimizing the exposures to that in the environment.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a great line of questioning. I like that a lot from Congressman Harder. Now let's go over to Russell Vogt and the Senate. This is Senator Tim Kaine questioning the smarmy, gross Russ Vought, who is the head of the Office of Budget and Management. And I also like what Tim Kaine did here and really mocked him good, as he deserves to be.
Forth between talking about the investment in the Department of Defense or the Department of War. Now, just for everybody here, legally, the name of this department is the Department of Defense, correct?
It's the Department of War.
And why do you say that?
Because that's what the president and his team has renamed it.
And there's a statute that calls it the Department of Defense. The president did an executive order saying the Department of War was a secondary title in September of 2025. Have you been instructed to use the phrase the Department of War?
No, there's an executive order that goes through a legal process. You're just
voluntarily complying with this whimsical cosplay. Let me ask you this.
You object to the word?
Let me ask you this.
The name?
Are you aware of legislation that's been passed by Congress to change the name?
No, I'm just curious as to the extent to which I didn't realize this would be a debate, Senator.
Well, I'm not debating you. I'm asking you a question.
It's a hostile world out there.
Are you aware?
The president did an executive order.
Are you aware of any bill to change the legal name of the department?
Not to my knowledge, but it's probably something we would consider.
Well, I'm saying there's an NDA process right now. If folks want to change it, I would look forward to that debate because I think you'll get laughed out of the room and you'll become a punchline on TV. Nations all around the world have secretaries and ministers of defense. Do you know of any that has a secretary and minister of war?
Our founders thought it was a pretty good name when
after World War II, President Truman changed it back. Are you aware of any nation in the world that calls this function war rather than defense?
I did not realize that this was a source of trouble.
I will tell you that there's no other nation. Do you know in the oath that our military officers take is the word war mentioned?
I'm not aware.
Defense is mentioned. War is not mentioned. Finally, you've sacked 350,000 people. Do you know what percentage are veterans?
Senator, we have ensured that all of the veteran preferences are stuck to.
30% of the federal workforce is veterans. So when you fire 350,000 people, I think you have fired more veterans than any administration in the history of the United States. I yield back.
Yeah, well done. He landed it. Good job, Tim Kaine. That was good. Okay, and finally, what I've got for you is from Minnesota. It's the district attorney of Hennepin County. Her name is Mary Moriarty. And she announced yesterday that an ICE agent who was part of a federal immigration surge in Minnesota earlier this year has been charged with felony second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon. The agent is accused of pointing a gun at the heads of two civilians in a vehicle. This is the first case of an ICE agent facing charges related to the regime's Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, which of course drew national outrage after the fatal shootings of two U.S. citizens. Renee Good, Alex Preddy say their names by federal immigration law enforcement. And so I want to play this before we get to my conversation with Glenn Kirschner, who I talk about it with. Take it away, Ms. DA.
Concerned as to whether there would be federal blowback.
The administration hasn't made, they've said that they won't be pleased if there are charges against any federal officers involved in immigration activities.
The question is, are we concerned as to whether there would be federal blowback? They've indicated they would not be happy, something of that nature, if federal agents were to be charged. Not a concern of ours. Our role, by the way, is to hold people accountable if they violate the laws of the state of Minnesota. And in this particular case, we feel strongly that this agent committed second-degree assault against both of these victims. We have charged the case, and our intent is to hold them accountable.
What is the supremacy clause?
Yes, Mary. On that note, the Trump administration has said these agents have absolute immunity. A message to them and a message to community members who, because of that, probably feel this is a waste of time.
So the question is, the Trump administration has said that agents have absolute immunity. That is wrong. They are wrong. And I think they've actually walked that back. We know that the vice president insisted that federal agents have absolute immunity. That is not true. They do not have absolute immunity. What could happen is that a federal agent who is charged could ask a federal court to remove the case from state court to federal court. Our office will still be prosecuting it, whether it's state court or federal court. As part of that, we would expect a federal agent to assert a supremacy clause defense, but that requires, and the burden is on the agent to show that what they were doing was within the scope of their authority as a federal agent. Our opinion is that illegally driving on a shoulder, pulling up to a car, and pointing a gun at the heads of two community members who are not doing anything at the time is well beyond the scope of their authority as federal agents. So they may say that, but we will litigate that in court. And there is no such thing as absolute immunity for federal agents who violate the law in the state of Minnesota or any other state.
All right, well, we will see what happens out there, but this is good. This is progress, and I love it. I don't love that I don't have any comedy clips for you this morning. I like to start and end with them, and I'm just out of time and really want to get this up ASAP for you to listen to. So sorry about that, but let's get to my conversation with Glenn Kirschner. Of course, you can watch it on Substack and YouTube, as well as a few other platforms that I go live on, and I did last night with him just before the Hangout. So caught up with some of the latest things he's been talking about over at his YouTube channel. We had a great time, as always. You should follow him over on YouTube, where he's got over 1 million followers now, as well on Substack. I'm sure most of you already do, and everywhere else. You can support him on Patreon. He's a very good friend of mine and the show's, and many of you are big fans, supporters of his as well, and individually, and I'm always happy when I get the opportunity to talk to him. We had a great one. I think you'll love it. Let's do it right now with the Kirschner Report. Justice Matters, Glenn Kirschner.
Man, you got that pink background, man. Your background matches my complexion.
We're both like a very similar complexion. When we do TV, when we would do TV together, I'm guessing we're live now, the makeup artist would just use the same palette. Maybe I'm a little browner than you are, pink.
Now, what is your – so I'm half Irish and half Hungarian, basically. What's your makeup?
So my mom's side is as white as it gets in terms of she's Irish and Welsh, but my dad is kind of brown and olive because my dad is half Lebanese, half Sicilian. My grandfather was Syrian, Lebanese, and my grandmother was Sicilian. So my dad is a tint of, we say, olive. So I got a little something.
I got the ruddy complexion from my mom, the Irish side, and then I got the bad judgment from my father's side.
Do you think – I feel like sometimes people attribute certain personality characteristics to certain ethnicities, and I feel it's all bullshit because people are like, oh, you're a hot-tempered Italian, which is like every ethnicity isn't hot-tempered. Like, what are we talking about? But I wonder if people might not know about this. You're very, very well known and famous now. Is there anything ethnic about you? Is there anything that from your childhood that you would say, you know, it was from the old country? Any tradition, whether it be a recipe? Did your parents hit your left hand with a ruler?
We lived in a duplex with my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, when I was young. And that's how my grandfather would take me out on house painting jobs when I was 8 years old, and I learned how to paint houses. And then we would knock off at about 3 or 3:30. We'd go to the corner bar. He would sit me up on a bar stool, get me a bowl of pretzels and a cherry Coke. He would smoke his filterless Camel cigarettes and do his PBR. I thought I was king of the world sitting up on a bar stool at 8 years old next to my grandpa. But he taught me how to paint houses inside and out, and I still have a love of painting. It's very cathartic. So my grandmother, who kind of raised me while both of my parents worked, she was Hungarian, spoke Hungarian, sang to me in Hungarian, so cooked great goulash and nukedli, something called nukedli, which is like a Hungarian dumpling in a brown gravy. I mean, it makes my mouthwater just thinking about it. So I did have that little bit of Hungarian in my background.
And did that particularly connect you with anything that's gone on in Hungary with Orban in this recent election? No, you didn't take a
I don't think so. Not the way my wife, Nilu, whom you know probably better than I would care for you to know her. She grew up in Iran and she lived through the revolution, had her rights revoked as a woman. And then she and her family got out in 1983. So she's here, had some of her rights revoked again, courtesy of the Dobbs decision. And she's like, oh, I've lived this movie before.
Has Nilu, your wife, ever spoken publicly? Have you interviewed her in any of your programs about this? If so, why not? She doesn't like to talk about it.
She does not like attention. In fact, when people knew she was a career immigration lawyer, some people from MSNBC and the Washington Post, they're like, will she come on? She's like, no. Will she do a print interview? No. She just does not like attention.
Have I got a surprise for you? Nilu, come on in.
Yeah, she is a little too enamored of you, and not just because you look like a mini me.
No, she says she thinks it's my humor and charisma and thoughtful kindness. Lots that I want to talk with you about tonight, and I'm happy to see you very much. Always happy to see you. First of all, I met Eric Swalwell at one of your events. You knew him through work, through a lot of the January 6th stuff. Tell me kind of what your relationship was with him, what, if anything, you've said to him, and what, if anything, did you ever hear any whispers about him? I bet he was on his best behavior in front of you.
Yeah, never heard any whispers. I met him in green rooms when I was on MSNBC. I pitched an idea for a federal law to him because I had been in the homicide business for 22 of my 30 years as a prosecutor. I saw the devastation it wrought to families, and I learned that there were more than 300,000 unsolved cold case murders nationwide. To me, it was unacceptable that these families who lost a loved one to violent crime had absolutely nowhere to turn. They had no legal rights. The day I retired from the Department of Justice, I sat down on my kitchen table, drafted up what would become the Homicide Victims Families Rights Act. I pitched it to then Representative Swalwell. He's a former prosecutor, and he heard me out. He put me in touch with his legislative team, and I worked with them for a couple of years. And President Biden signed into law in August 2022 the Homicide Victims Families Rights Act. So now victims have a right, a statutory legal right, to have the police agency that first investigated their loved one's murder review the file after it's grown cold after 3 years, and then, depending on the results of the review, potentially a full reinvestigation. And now we're pushing that law out into the states because it started as a federal statute. That was my professional association with Eric Swalwell. I never had a personal association. He did come to some of our annual Team Justice gatherings. Indeed, he brought his mother and his aunt to one. He spoke to the crowd, and I appreciated that. I never had a social relationship with him and never heard a single whisper. And that is what, like Representative Gallo, is it, and Senator Schiff said the same thing. I mean, they were close to him, never had a hint of it. And I'll tell you, what he is alleged to have done by multiple women, and it seems like there's a good bit of corroborating evidence. Not that I wouldn't believe the victims in any event. I was a prosecutor. I was in the business of trying to prove that victims were telling us the truth about what happened to them. So it is horrific. And Pete, you think you can tell the good guys from the bad guys. Not always, but you generally have a pretty good sense. And I'll tell you, I was shocked, disgusted, and now we stand with the victims, and this dude's got to be held accountable, period.
Well, I guess you can always separate the legislation from the legislator or the art from the artist. And, so often somebody like him is on the right side of a wide range of issues, but in his own personal life, he's abusing and assaulting women. I mean, that's pretty unfortunately common. The difference, however, is there are two types of people in America and anywhere. Those who would tolerate that from someone serving in any level of government, local, state, or national, federal government in any country. Those who work in the private sector, there's a different threshold. Obviously, there's a different threshold for criminal prosecution for certain crimes. But the bottom line is we ran him out on a rail within a few days because we agree. We're the type of people who agree that I don't care how good of a legislator you are or a soccer player or a movie producer. if at this in this day and age, if you're that kind of guy, you can't be, at least in this case, Glenn, a Democrat. You can't campaign as one. You can't be elected. That is not the case for the Republican Party. I would say it used to be, but it sure isn't anymore.
Oh, you can be president, right? You can be a sex offender and be president of the United States, and the Republican Party will turn a blind eye, will refuse to deal with it. And, that is just condoning it, if not encouraging it. I don't care, Pete, and I know you don't care. Somebody carries a D or an R or an I next to their name. It doesn't matter. You're out there, committing sexual offenses. You got to get got. You got to be held accountable. And as you say, you got to be run out on a rail. So I wish the Republican Party felt that way as well.
Got to talk to you about some major legal cases, as always, or developments, as always. And today we learned that a state prosecutor, I think the district attorney of Hennepin County, which I think is where Minneapolis is bringing charges against an ICE agent who threatened someone, pulled his gun and threatened someone. Do I have that right? And why is everybody making such a big deal of that? The only thing I know is that you can't, if they're state charges, that he can't be pardoned, or the federal government, that's why it's being done that way. I feel like that's the only, why is this such a big deal?
It shouldn't be a big deal. If you commit a crime, it really doesn't matter what your status is, whether you're a federal law enforcement officer, local law enforcement officer, no kind of law enforcement officer. You unlawfully point a gun at somebody, that's an assault with a dangerous weapon, an ADW. The reason it is being received as a big deal, Pete, is because we have seen with our own damn eyes on cell phone video after cell phone video, assaults being committed by federal agents, generally masked, they look like masked marauders, right? They are assaulting American citizens. They're assaulting documented immigrants. They're assaulting undocumented immigrants, and they're getting away with it. And thank goodness now, DA, District Attorney Moriarty of Hennepin County said, listen, this ICE agent committed crimes in violation of our state law when he pulled up alongside a vehicle. He was in an unmarked, I think, rented vehicle, and drew his gun and pointed it at the two occupants of the adjacent vehicle, putting them in imminent fear of being injured. That's what makes it an assault. And she said, so we are charging him. And she was asked the question, but Vice President Vance said they have absolute immunity. And she said, he's wrong. Thank goodness. And I hope this gets justice trending, where these masked federal immigration enforcement agents no longer feel like they can do whatever they damn well please, up to and including murdering Alex Preddy. And right before they killed Alex Preddy, after they disarmed him, they threw a woman to the ground. That is an assault and battery. There was no lawful justification for that. Alex Preddy went to help her. They put him down, took his gun, shot him in the back. That's murder. Take it from a career homicide prosecutor. He needs to be held accountable as well, but the federal government is blocking the state from getting the evidence and doing what it needs to do.
I think that was where the confusion lied for some of us, where it's like, okay, this is really bad that an ICE agent pulled his gun, and it's really good that they're prosecuting him. But what about the ICE agents who shot and killed Renee Good and Alex Preddy? And I think you just explained it, that the federal
they're investigating that actively, and they're fighting, and they're using the courts to try to, wrestle away from the federal authorities the evidence they need to move forward in the Renee Good and Alex Preddy investigations.
In, quote, normal America, Earth One, if a federal agent had done that, how the federal government would have handled it, Department of Justice would have handled it. It wouldn't, the states wouldn't, because they would take care of their own responsibility, just like a court martial in the military.
On Earth One, in the before times when the rule of law was a thing at the Department of Justice, it was, and I'm going to quote Kristen Clark, the former head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice, it was the sacred duty of the Civil Rights Division to investigate officer-involved fatal shootings. We investigated each and every one. Pete, even if only to clear the officer because it was a good shoot, because maybe the person he killed was about to fire a gun at him. There are circumstances where deadly force can and should be used by law enforcement agents. But the DOJ Civil Rights Division investigated every one until now, and now they are blocking. So the state is trying to step into the void created by the dirty DOJ leadership, but DOJ won't even give them the evidence. This is ugly, ugly.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about this guy, John Eastman. The headline, lawyer John Eastman disbarred for efforts to overturn 2020 election. The California Supreme Court upheld the lower court's decision, said Mr. Eastman had violated the rules of professional ethics. You can go over to Glenn's YouTube page where he's got over 1 million followers. For Christ's sake, this motherfucker is so unbelievably popular. It bothers me and keeps me up. I wake up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m. I go, why? Why him? Why has he done so well? You have a great video explaining this over there at that very popular YouTube page, so people can go more in depth, but give us the shortest version of why this matters. John Eastman and the California Supreme Court, and if this is the end of it.
John Eastman came up with a criminal scheme to try to overturn the results of the 2020 election, tried to help Donald Trump steal an election contrary to the expressed will of the American voters. What he did is he said, I think Mike Pence should refuse to count the votes, the Electoral College votes, should throw it all to the states, let the states have their own vote. Each state gets one vote if it legitimately ended up in the states because of a true contest. And because there are more red states than blue states, guess what? Trump wins and Biden loses, even though obviously Biden was legitimately elected. And here is really the kicker, Pete. Back during the January 6th hearings, there was evidence that we all saw that we have probably forgotten, but I'm going to read from the reporting.
Okay.
John Eastman acknowledged that the plot that I just described to block certification of Joe Biden's election victory wasn't legal, but he said, let's do it anyway. Pete, this was an easy decision for the California State Bar and the California courts to disbar this mother because of what he did, and he did it cavalierly, even acknowledging it was illegal. That's really not the ethical practice of law.
Is it a high bar threshold disbarment generally? And so this is.
I would say it's a high threshold in that each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia issue licenses to practice law. Each state has its own process for sort of investigating and then sort of litigating, even though it's not exactly a trial, allegations of unethical conduct by attorneys. And each bar has its own series of sanctions depending on the severity of the unethical conduct. So, this is big ticket unethical conduct, what I just described. Some attorneys, they don't separate their clients' funds and keep them in the proper bank account. Those are, I don't want to call them relatively minor transgressions, but it ain't stealing in a presidential election from the American people.
Right.
So there might be a lesser sanction for that. Maybe you're suspended for 30 days from the practice of law. This is disbarable.
Okay, well, good news then. And is that the end of it, do you think? He'll keep appealing to get his job
Well,
back?
he's going to try to go to the Supreme Court, but there's no reason for the Supreme Court to look at this. And I would say, maybe other attorneys should use this as a cautionary tale, Pete, because you think about the Donald Trump disbarred lawyers club, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Jeffrey Clark. Now, who is in the queue to make their way into that club? Pam Bondi, Lindsay Halligan, Todd Blanche. Look, we saw these guys go down and get disbarred the first time around. Why in the hell are these attorneys willing to do Donald Trump's dirty bidding, understanding they're going to end up members of that club?
Such a great question, and there's no answer. But since you brought up Todd Blanche, who said, I will tell the president I love him. I love you, Mr. President. I don't think we talked about it last time we talked, but if he's right now the acting attorney general because Pam Bondi is gone, and that means he would have to go through a confirmation process if he was the nominee. And the reason he can't do that is because he'll be asked about why Ghislaine Maxwell is got an upgrade. That's the reporting, or that's the thought that I've heard. What do you make of him as AG? And When will there be a nomination? Like, it seems like a pretty important role to have an acting occupying for very long.
It is. And I don't know if he's confirmable, but with the Republicans in control of the Senate, I guess anybody is confirmable. And when he said, if Donald Trump fired me, in essence, as Attorney General, I would say, thank you, sir. I love you.
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with this dude?
So weird.
Right? I mean, so, talk about the separation that we're supposed to see between the Oval Office, the White House, and the Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice. Well, when the Attorney General gets fired and says, I will say, I love you, Mr. President. Come on now. You're really not representing the interests of the American people, are you, sport?
Real gross.
So I think the rules are for an acting AG, you can be in that job for up to 270 days, if I'm not mistaken, before you're going to get run out of the job and there has to be a Senate confirmed appointment. But so, he can do some damage in the next couple of 100 days for sure. He is not an honest broker of the law. He is still in violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act because there are some 3 million documents, we are told, that have not yet been released. So, he's going to do his worst. And at least once the Dems take control of the House, I think they ought to carpet bomb these people with congressional subpoenas and get them in there, get them lying under oath, which is what these people do. And then you're basically setting up perjury charges for the future.
I got to ask you what's going on with it's gotten undercovered, not by you. You got a great video at your amazing YouTube page where you're doing so unbelievably well that people should subscribe to it and your Substack. Blow my brains out. But the bottom line is you have a video called Trump's DOJ tries to erase J6 Capitol attack, and this is getting undercovered. Chris Hayes mentioned something about it last night, but I mean, I'm looking at headlines from March. January 6th rioter pardoned by Trump gets life sentence for child abuse. If people read that story, that dude was horrible. He was abusing his girlfriend's son and daughter, then showed up at January 6th, gets arrested, goes to prison. Those kids find sweet relief that their abuser's been imprisoned. Guess what? He gets out, goes back to his girlfriend, abuses the kids again. I think I've got that story right. Chris Hayes said last night, there's another guy who's been pardoned as, I think, sexually abusing kids. But what are you talking about when it comes to the Department of Justice trying to erase the Capitol attack?
Yeah, so this is a story that both infuriates me, but there's a silver lining. So yesterday, Jeanine Pirro, the DC U.S. attorney, God help us all, that's my former office, filed a motion, which I have right here, and she said that we want to dismiss the seditious conspiracy convictions against the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. These two groups were the tip of the insurrection spear on January 6th. She said, and I quote, we want to dismiss these convictions because it's in the interests of justice, close quote. Here's the thing, Pete. These cases will now go back down to the trial court judges who presided over the trials in the first instance to rule on this motion to dismiss those convictions. What are they trying to do by dismissing these convictions? They're trying to whitewash the judicial court record of any evidence that they were convicted. By extension, Donald Trump wants to try to whitewash American history of all things January 6th. But I'll tell you, if I'm the judges and these two judges who presided over these cases are good judges, Amit Mehta over the Oath Keepers case, the former public defender in D.C., Tim Kelly on the Proud Boys case, former federal prosecutor from my office, I have to believe they're going to say, first of all, Jeanine, I am ordering you to appear at an evidentiary hearing that I'm setting on your motion to dismiss. You're going to take the stand. I'm going to place you under oath, and you're going to present evidence about why, as you represented as a matter of fact in this motion to dismiss, why it is in the interests of the American people and of justice to dismiss these seditious conspiracy convictions. Because, Pete, it's not. It is a searing injustice in service to dear leader. So basically, she lied in this pleading, I contend. And then if I'm those judges, I say, motion to dismiss, denied. Bye-bye. go see the Court of Appeals if you want to appeal my decision. But I, the judge, will not be complicit in your attempt to whitewash what happened on January 6th. And that's exactly what you want me to do by dismissing these convictions.
Ah, that's good. That's a good silver lining. And there's more because Trump keeps losing in court. I saw the librarians won and got their funding back and more. So my final question to you is, as you look at the kind of legal world and the lawsuits that are being filed by so many brave legal organizations and the wins, and if you look at the wins, the wins in court and the WINDS that are blowing, the tariffs have blown up, the war has blown up, the economy has slowed. Everything looks really bad in terms of midterm elections. It almost looks like we're going to win so big that it'll be like Hungary. You can't say you rigged it. I don't want to get over my skis here, but still, that's where I feel like the winds are blowing legally and politically. We're here in mid-April talking to you. Justice Matters, Glenn Kirschner. How are you feeling right now? I feel like we're in a pretty good position given the horror and the chaos of our long national nightmare.
You just used a lot of words to describe it. I'm going to use 3. Justice is trending. I do think we're on a good trajectory, and you just laid out all the reasons why, Pete. I would add to that I am very optimistic that the birthright citizenship case is going to get crammed down Donald Trump and DOJ's throat. That will be good on the heels of the tariffs case getting crammed down Donald Trump and DOJ's throat, figuratively speaking. And I do feel like the winds are shifting. We're not out of the woods. I don't even know that we can see the edge of the woods from here, but I think we're trending in a good direction. His poll numbers are lower than whale shit, right? And I suspect they're going to go even lower. You know what? If they can vote that autocrat out in Hungary, well, then we can vote this autocrat out. And we have to start at the midterms by getting the sycophantic, cowardly Republicans in Congress the hell out. They won't even vote on a war powers resolution. And our men and women are being killed in an unconstitutional war.
Well, they did vote on it. Democrats brought it right in both the House and the Senate, but almost unanimously, Republicans voted against it. Democrats voted for it, except for in the Senate, Rand Paul and John Fetterman. And in the House, I think it was down party lines as well. So just to be clear.
Yeah, they won't vote in favor of it, I should have said.
Right.
And that does such a disservice to our men and women in military. And frankly, they're also, slaughtering innocent Iranian citizens rather. So, these Republicans in Congress won't even step up and serve their own damn constituents, never mind, caring about the health of American democracy. We got to get to the polls and get rid of them.
Finally, I've never seen you defend Trump. I was shocked to see you publicly defending his argument that it was a doctor, not Jesus. Make the case, Glenn.
Yeah, and I wish I was as creative as some of these folks, because I saw a picture of Jesus walking on water and people are like, hey, why is my doctor water skiing? And I mean, one after another after
my
another.
My doctor mocked up an image of him as Jesus and me as his patient.
Pete, let me ask you, do you believe some of what I've seen where somebody says they tell Donald Trump something, like say it's an incursion and he gets it wrong and he calls it an excursion. He started the Hannibal Lecter, people are being let out of asylums to come to this country, when he heard they were seeking asylum in this country. And then the other one is with the Jesus photo that he posted of himself. Somebody said, say it was doctored. And he said, I was a doctor. All of that begins to ring true to me.
Yeah. I don't always buy that he has degraded and has dementia, and because I have always believed, and I don't know how to say this, we've analyzed this guy for 10 years. I've always believed, and I think it's from my perspective as a comedian, that he's a pretty good salesman. That's his thing. That was his thing on The Apprentice. He sold us that he was a good businessman. He's good on the campaign trail and so on. But the thing is, like, he's He's only as good as the dumbest people are dumb in America. And I hate to say it that way because even the dumbest political person has something to offer me. I don't want to like dehumanize people. I don't like to do that. Like the dumbest Trumper could help me fix an engine or teach me how to do any number of things. So they're smart about, but it's hard for people to believe just how, duped, unintelligent, uneducated, uninformed a lot of people are, that they buy this stuff. But there's a lot of those people, and he's that dumb. And I think we have a hard time wrapping our head around that people would look at him and believe that he's in any way what he says he is ever.
Yeah. I mean, I have often said he only fools the gullible, but he also has an iron grip on his cult members, and they're not necessarily
the same.
Gullible. They're susceptible to whatever it is that he provides to them.
But to be fair, I feel like all the political punditry in the world doesn't matter between now and November, because the only thing that matters is gas prices, which affect everything else. And everybody sees them. You could be completely apolitical, have no idea who even is president, and find out who is president because gas is $6 or more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't see it coming down anytime soon, unless the oil companies collude to get it down to $2 a gallon just so they can kind of keep their grift with the Republican Party going. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll see. Stranger things have happened. Glenn Kirschner, Justice Matters, a great appearance. A lot of people are talking about your appearance on today's show.
On the Today Show? On what? Which show?
On today's episode.
On this show. It's already people are already talking about this.
A lot of people are saying.
Wow. Well, thank you to both of you who watched.
Say hi to Chuck and Mary Dominic. All right, bud. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
All right. There it is. Always fun. Wasn't that good? We went all over the place, and we had a lot of fun at the same time. A great friend, Glenn Kirschner. Go subscribe to everything he is doing on Patreon, on Substack, on YouTube. Yes, he's nightly meetings on Substack. Almost every night he goes on and talks to folks. So he's great. We love him, and I love him, and that is all I've got for you today. I thought I'd have Christian Finnegan at some point today or tomorrow, but we couldn't make it work. But we will probably get together early next week. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you find some joy and you get to ease some suffering, maybe have some of yours eased. Either way, hang out in the Discord chat on the Discord platform. If you get lonely, there's always listeners in there, and stay touched, stay close, and be good, and be the change you want to see. And I love you guys. I'll talk to you Monday.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee be the seed of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand